So thank you so much for joining me today, Maddie. So I wonder if it would be okay for you to introduce yourself. I always ask guests to sort of say a few words about yourself, sort of who you are, what you do, where you're from, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Maddie Booth. I basically do a whole lot of things. I've got loads of different hats. I think I love it when people say, okay, give your name and then give your title, because my title is just, I don't know what it is.
It's not that long.
Yeah. If you could give me like an essay, I could probably give it to you. So yeah, the main kind of areas that I work in are women in sustainability and business. So I've got a kind of cross sector, mainly working in skills development of kind of business leaders in sustainability, consulting, but I also do artwork. I'm a bit of a comedian in that side, and that side of me is my kind of hidden love in the business world. But yeah, a little bit of art, a little bit of sustainability.
Incredible. So let's start at the beginning if we can. So if we were going to touch on one thing in your early life, in your childhood, which has sort of shaped and defined who you are, what would that thing be?
Yeah, definitely. I think it would probably be my relationship with my mum. She's probably the kind of first person that I go to about anything that I'm struggling with now in day-to-day life. And I think she was really kind of the main person in my entire life that really shaped who I am as a person. So we had a bit of an interesting childhood where she brought up 3 children on her own. Went through some very rocky periods where we were homeless for about 6 months. We kind of went through that stage of bringing up a newborn with a mum that was kind of dealing with a little bit of PTSD and kind of aftermath from a C-section. So at 11 years old, I sort of became a mum figure to a child, which was a really interesting, and now I look back on it, I notice those characteristics that came from those early years. Very interesting relationships with the male figures kind of earlier on in life. Definitely had quite a few stepdads growing up, which wasn't interesting and has definitely impacted now on today, but we're getting through that definitely. And I think sort of the main thing that kind of was a kind of thread going through our whole entire childhood was resilience. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that today I notice in everything that I do, whether it's in business, whether it's in personal life, etc. And really that she's like the most tenacious person I've ever met in my entire life. Like she'll always have an opinion on something. She'll always be really energetic and really friendly to new people. And the biggest thing she always taught me was, you never know who you're going to meet and how important they're going to be to you. So the most important thing is when you first meet somebody to make like not only a good first impression, but also to make sure that that person feels like welcomed, to be super smiley and to sort of give that aura of like, this person deserves your attention pretty much. And that's sort of how I've come to live my life since then.
That's a beautiful way to approach people. I think really unusual as well. Like one of the things which I actually really love about you is that you're so generous with your time and also your network and your resources as well. Like unfortunately it's a little bit rare to come across that, you know, but it's like as soon as you meet you, it's like you're giving all of your time and attention to someone. So that's from your mum then?
Definitely. I think that's actually something that really surprised that you picked up on that actually, because I always think that, and that as soon as someone will come to me like, okay, maybe it's a young girl trying to start her own business the first time, and she's like, oh, can I just have 5 minutes of your time? Like, da, da, da. I'm like, absolutely. Like, let's set up a meeting. Let's have a chat through the things I struggle with. This is things to avoid, etc. Because I think it comes from having to go through a whole load of hoops yourself and understanding how difficult it is. And the phrase of it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know is so true. Like throughout my whole business journey from a very young age, it was always kind of faced an extra 30 barriers to someone else who was kind of going through a similar process as me. So now I'm very much like, if I could make someone else's life easier from the things that I've learned, then I don't see why I wouldn't do that.
Totally. It's like this thing of as well, because you've kind of mentioned imposter syndrome in the past and sort of feeling like, am I qualified to be here kind of thing? And with that, it sort of comes with, for me as well, I kind of am tentative to approach people because I'm like, am I even there yet? Have I done like enough work to prove that I'm like good enough to like even have the attention of this person who works in the industry, who I'd love to be my mentor, I'd love to shadow, I'd love to, you know. But it's amazing that you can be generous with your time like that, because it makes so much difference for that person psychologically as well to go, maybe I am enough.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I always get the imposter syndrome. Even if like anyone asks me like, oh, do you have a little bit of advice on this? Or like, you've done this before, can you tell me your experience? I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I can. Yeah. And that's immediately the first thing that comes into my head, like, oh, do I actually like have the knowledge to give this person? Right. Will it be useful? And the biggest thing for me, like really recently, my time at uni was like really interesting. Kind of hated university, kind of loved it. Didn't like the academic side. I've never really been like really focused on academic. But recently, and like whilst I was at university, I got kind of told off quite a bit here and there from doing silly things. But then in January this year, I was invited back by the university to do the alumni speech. And I was actually the youngest alumni speaker that they'd ever had back at the university. And I was just like, when I see the email, I was like, oh, okay, are you sure? And the person who sent it, I was like, didn't care about me one bit whilst I was at the university. So I was sort of like, okay, here we go. So I went back and did it. And I think that was the biggest imposter syndrome moment for me. Because I was like, okay, I was sat in this crowd a couple of years ago as a graduate, had kind of enjoyed my time at university, but also things that I wouldn't want to do again. And now I'm on the stage trying to give advice to people who are in my position.
Wow.
And it's just like a whole full circle. And that was just the weirdest moment for me, because I was just like, okay, actually, really people do kind of follow your journey, keep in touch with what you do. And the fact that the university reached out and asked me to come back was like a whole game changer for me.
That's such a flattering thing, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Like for what you've reached in such a short time as well. Like it's a circle, but it's a really quick circle.
Exactly. Fast pace.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. If we can circle back a little bit as well before we move on to your uni days. So in terms of the influence from your women in your life to begin with, they're sort of quite fierce, perhaps it's fair to say, and quite generous and strong-minded as well, resilient, because you had to be. There's no other way, facing homelessness and facing being on the breadline when you're younger, that you have to be resilient. But the men in your life were sort of coming and going a little bit more, sort of various stepdads. In what way did that affect you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the mum definite side, I think the best thing is like loads of people grow up with completely both parents being unstable.
Right.
So I think that like for me, I've always valued that part of me, even though that I've had various stepdads and had various uncomfortable experiences with male figures in my life. It's always been that really strong figure throughout, being the maternal. I mean, she took on the dad's role because she had to as well. And I think that's sort of who I am now, and my partner will tell you that I'm not very good at being told what to do. I'm not very good at listening to instructions, and I think that's definitely stems through. But definitely growing up with a whole variety of different male figures really impacted on how I saw males and how I interacted with them. It was very much, if I think back to like my sort of important years that I remember, sort of from 11 to maybe 15, that's when I struggled the most, because I think not having a single male figure at that time that I looked up to, respected, or felt comfortable or safe with, I think that was and that's the years where you're really developing like your relationships with external people, your relationship with yourself and how you view yourself and things like that. And I think that's probably was the most difficult time, and how I interpreted that and how I acted because of my relationship with males probably wasn't the best. Like I didn't deal well with male authority at school. I was constantly getting in trouble from that. I didn't deal well with I went to like a grammar school growing up, but I was the only person there on scholarship. So it was a private school, but everybody else who was there was very well off, came from very well off families. But I was lucky enough to get in on scholarship, and my mum had pushed for me for years and years leading up to it. Like, let's train you ready so that you're there, you're ready to go. Which was a really interesting experience, because you've got the cross dynamic there of not only being with young boys who are going through puberty and going through that kind of mental change and dealing with young girls as well, of being in mixed school. You've also got the added on impact of elitism there, and that's really what I really struggled with, coming from a very sort of working class upbringing, then going through the whole trauma of having like absolutely no money, living on the breadline, and having to interpret that and not understanding at that age why I couldn't have the things that they could have.
Right.
Then set not only the different sort of how I interpreted myself and my well-being and how valuable I was to society, let's say that, but also then how valuable I was to men as well. And because there were no men that stayed through our entire lives, and no, we didn't have an experience of a man in our life that was, when I say I mean me and my sister growing up.
Sure.
An experience of a man who was like, who made us feel safe, made us feel actually that we were wanted as well. And I think that kind of came out to me of me as a young girl between those ages seeking male attention in ways that now I look back on, I feel so sorry for her at that time, because I'm like, that is not how, like, you are so valuable in yourself. You didn't need to do those things to make yourself valuable to men.
Yeah.
So there's definitely things that like still haunt me now that I'm like, God, I wish I hadn't gone through that.
Yeah.
But I think those years were so important because it made me kind of, again, a lot more resilient. And if I probably hadn't had the really strong mother figure, I probably would have gone way worse down those routes.
Right.
So, but coming from pretty much 15, 16 onwards, I then became like, I had a really, really respectful boyfriend from that time whose family were absolutely amazing, really taught me what it was like to have a family like sort of have a real
Sure.
family, let's call it that.
Yeah.
A more normal, a traditional,
setup,
there we go. And then when I was 16, 17, my mum met my stepdad. And that was the complete turning point for me. That was when I realised that men can be absolutely amazing. I can have a really strong relationship with them. There doesn't have to be any power imbalances or anything like that. And I think that if my mum hadn't met him, I would probably still be dealing really badly with my relationship with men. So, like, he's amazing now. We are really close. Like, he's literally one of my best friends. Like, I would go to him about anything.
Yeah.
And he really kind of put me on the straight and narrow because I understood, I saw that relationship between my mum and him that I'd never seen before. I'd never seen my mum happy. I'd never seen my mum looked after by a man. I'd never seen that sort of more sort of masculine, feminine relationship because my mum had always had to take both of those roles going forward, whether she was with a man or not.
Right.
And that was really sort of the big turning point for me because then that's affected all my relationships since then, and all my relationships have been pretty healthy since then. So I think, without him, we definitely have some issues to face.
Oh God, totally. It's so interesting you bring that up. I relate in a way that when you're a young woman, and I even tentative to say woman, I mean when you're in your teens and you're finding yourself, it does seem the dynamic that is around, and I mean, maybe it's a little different now as things are on the internet are becoming perhaps, a little bit more, a bit better, but it does feel as though your only value to some boys, and my experience, most boys, is how attractive you are, or that sort of thing. They don't necessarily look on you as a friend as such, and therefore they're sort of taught males are your friends and females are conquests, and you feel that, don't you? You feel that so deeply, and that played on my psychology, I think, as well. And I remember, I mean, there was a time that I actually sent pretty nude raw photographs actually to someone when I was under 16. And I was in that state of, I could not believe that he was looking at me. Like, he was a good looking guy. No one had ever looked my way before. And I thought, something inside me went, this makes me worthy. I like the way he sees me and, his eyes. And oh my God, do I regret that stupid behavior. But like, it's an interesting dynamic from when we're young, isn't it? And we do need that kind of strong mother figure, or that incredible relationship with men where we go, actually, I do have worth, like beyond what perhaps these immature men, these boys are seeing in me. And to stick with that is what we need.
Absolutely. And I went through pretty much the exact same experience, so I can definitely understand on that front. And I think that would be in my top 5 regrets in my entire life. Those things that have happened. And I think it's so, like, now looking back on it, it's something that I shut out of my memory for so long, things that happened during those periods, and especially what you've just mentioned. because I was so ashamed of it. But actually, like, my instance, it happened when I was like very young, and it was actually to somebody that was over 16. So at the time, like now, we'd understand that that would be illegal. He'd be put in jail for something like that. Or for instance, like at 16 years old. And I think like at the time I was like, this is on me. I've wronged. I've done this, even though there are a whole load of things that led up to that and after it that I was like completely sort of pushed into this like slut figure in the school and bullied for years and years after that. And it shrouded my entire experience in school because of those things that happened. And whereas he got off completely, he was like, oh yeah, you got like this girl to send you nudes, like amazing. And it was sent around the entire school. And so it's just sort of where you look back on it now, and I remember I got a text message from this guy when I was maybe 19, so at university, in a really good headspace. Like I'd worked really hard, I'd got myself into a great university, I was super excited about, like I think I was moving to Australia like 3 weeks later, so like, I was like on my absolute highest point. Yeah. I was like, no one can bring me down right now. And then I got a text message from him saying, oh, I've seen what you've been up to at uni, how are you, da 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 da. And then it like, the end of the message was like really flirtatious, and I've never been that angry in my entire life. I was like, how on earth dare this man who put me through that absolute trauma during going through school not once supported me when he was the one that sort of pushed me and pretty much blackmailed me into sending this photo. And then from that point onwards, then proceeded to think that actually he'd done nothing wrong, and still didn't feel that 7 years later, 6 years later. And it just is so ingrained into like certain parts of society, and especially private schools. And I think I loved my school. I would not change it for the world because it put me where I was now and getting the opportunity to go there. But I really struggle with that sort of, I don't know what forms there, like the young males that have been brought up with wealth their whole life, not having to fight for anything, not having to sort of not have been told no, that's the be all and end all of it. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I think now, like I look back on it and I didn't process that whole experience and what I kind of went through those sort of really rough 5 years until probably last year. And I think that for me is when I first started sort of, I was single for quite a long period of time, and I was really kind of working on myself, and that's when I started to actually process what happened there. Like, how has that affected my chemistry now? How has that affected the way that I deal with situations? And I had sort of shut it out and not enabled situations during that time to come up and affect, even though they were affecting me deep down.
Yeah, in ways that were non-verbal, and
absolutely,
you make choices because of them without realising you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
God. So if we move on a little bit to your university experience, so you went to Warwick.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of experience as a whole, and sort of, because you said you perhaps weren't into the more studious aspects of it, and it was more just, trying to get where you wanted to get.
Yeah, I definitely think from a very early age, I knew that I had to work a lot harder than other people for the academic side to do as well as people would do, maybe kind of just out of fluke. So at 12 years old, I was told I had dyslexia.
Okay.
And that for me was like, at the time I was like, oh my God, I'm stupid. Like, this is going to affect my entire life. Like, I can't do some things that other people can do, and my life is just going to be a whole lot harder because I've been told this. But actually, that's definitely not true. And like, now there are things that I absolutely love about like having dyslexia. Like, I just see things differently to how other people do. And like, it's an amazing, like, somebody put it recently on LinkedIn actually as a skill, like a professional skill that you can have.
I love that.
And I was like, what an amazing like movement towards this. But yeah, so pretty much from a younger age, I understood that academia was going to be a little bit harder for me. There were some things that I was really good at, the artistic side. Like, I did, for my A-levels, I did English and art and geography and politics. And the English and art absolutely loved. Like, I would literally do so much reading around the topic. I would do so much stuff at home because I was so comfortable and I felt like I was like valued in it. Like, people, like my teachers would like be like, okay, the best student in the class and things like that. So I would really push that. And then when I got to uni, that was a whole nother kettle of fish. Like, Warwick is insanely studious. I had no idea before I went. The main reason I chose the course, and I chose the course literally 2 weeks before it was due. So I chose the course because my stepdad was working in sustainability. I was fascinated with like waste and consumption and like how we overconsume in society. And it was pretty much the only degree out there in sustainability at the time. But because I went to a private school, I was sort of pushed down the route of going into Oxford or Cambridge. So I put in my Cambridge application, went through all of that. Didn't get in, fortunately. Now, fortunately, at the time, crushed. But I also thought I will make my life even harder before I went to university and decided to sit my SATs for American universities. So try not to just do 4 A-levels, do SATs as well.
Oh my God.
So that was really fun. And I didn't get into like Cambridge, and then American ones I was like, actually it's not for me, really kind of came to the conclusion that I don't think I was ready for that. I'd spent some time in the States before my GCSEs for like a trip around sort of like Model UN style, so sort of like public speaking, etc. So I'd kind of experienced it a little bit, and I was like, I really want to go back, but I don't know if I want to commit to all that time over there. So yeah, got into Warwick, understood that it was very, very studious, didn't really know what I'd got myself into, and pretty much chose it because it was in sustainability. Secondly, it enabled me to go to Australia, and I was like, I need some travelling with my university. And thirdly, they enabled, which is really, really rare, at dissertation level, they enable you to do a project instead of doing a written dissertation. And for me, I was like, that's amazing, because I can't write 10,000 words or 15,000 words. And I was like, okay, that actually seems like it might be a good route to go down. So applied, got in, etc. And my entire uni experience was interesting, I would definitely say. I didn't spend a lot of time in the lecture or seminars, etc. I did a whole lot of like extracurricular stuff, because I think that was the best thing for me at being a campus-based university.
Right.
You're living on campus, you're living and breathing like youthful life. So I was like, I am going to do as much as possible here and do the things that maybe I hadn't got an opportunity to do like prior to going to university. It was the first time as well that I started to have like a good job and earn money. And I was sort of like, okay, I'm living like pretty much self-sufficiently. Like, I couldn't ask for any money from my mum. And that was sort of when I really took off in doing extracurricular stuff. And I think understanding how to live on your own and how to be self-sufficient was more interesting to me than doing really well in academia. So I'd never gone into the assumption at university of like, I want to come out with a first or like a really high grade, etc. It was always like, I want to learn the life skills so that when I come out of university, I don't have to move back home. Like, I never want to be like reliant on someone else. So that's pretty much like, I worked a lot at university, loads of different jobs, did a whole load of extracurriculars, tried to basically make my kind of character, my persona into something that was really attractive to a job after university, so that I could go into more of those higher paid jobs, etc. So that's pretty much my experience.
That's such a good idea, because most people are the opposite. I was the opposite. I was like, I need to get the grades. And like, now I'm coming to the conclusion that the world is run by humans.
Absolutely.
Shock horror.
Yes.
And humans hold the keys to all the doors.
Yeah.
And you need to, create relationships and have the ability to be able to be likable and be charismatic and have all of those qualities.
Yeah, that's where I first did the networking, which was interesting, because my uni experience got shrouded by strikes. So we basically lost out our entire first year of university from strikes, which was a bit of a shame. Then the third year was COVID. So I basically had like a year of university, to be honest. But I think like the biggest thing that sort of jumps out at me with that is that it's the first when I got into networking. So first when I got into meeting new people, like in the business world, I was like, I don't know whether I want to start a business, but I was really interested in what came with finding out who you know, because I'd never had that. I never had like a family member that had gone off and done this and that and was the head of this bank or whatever. Like, so I never had any connections. So I was sort of like, okay, if I want to do well further on, everyone's always talking about this, like who you know. So I was like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's see if I can get my foot in the door here. So that's when I first, like, Warwick has like an amazing like networking scene, like so many different people come and host events, etc. So I started going to them, and on my first ever networking event, this will make you laugh, I went in, I was the only woman there, and I was the only young woman there as well. It was pretty much like all middle-aged men, and I went over to like get a coffee on the coffee stand area, and I was like pouring a coffee like from the machine, etc. And a guy goes to me, oh, can I have a flat white and a latte? And I was like, you can. Of course you can. I was like, I don't know why you're asking me. Because I was never sort of the person to be like, oh yeah, I'll do it. Because my mum had taught me like, just say it how it is. Like, be like brash and be arrogant if you need to be. And so I just turned, I was like, yeah, of course you can. And then I just walked away with my coffee. And he came up to me like 30 seconds later and he was like, oh, like, sorry, I asked you earlier for the flat white. And he was like very apologetic because he still thought I was a waitress at this point. No. And he just thought I'd forgotten. And I was like, hint, man. I was like, I don't work here. I was like, I'm sorry. And it was so funny. And like throughout the whole time of that event, it just cracked me up so much because I'd spoken up quite a lot in that event as well. And at the after he came up to me and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for saying that. And I was like, it's okay. I understand what you were thinking at the time. And then he was like, oh, and the points that you said were really interesting and all of this. And I was like, I know. I know. I know. I actually do know some things. I don't just know how to make a good coffee. And it turns out basically that he had seen me work as a barista somewhere else. Like recently, I was a barista at university. Okay. So I did allow it. I was like, okay, but I did get a little bit offended. So yeah, that was my first experience of it. And then since, the networking scene's been definitely very interesting. I've had a male ask to take a photo with me, which was a bit random, and I was like, okay, it's fine if you want to take a photo with me. This was before I did like anything, like I was very new in the business scene. And then in the photo, he slid his hand down the back of me onto my ass and said, I love the way you arch your back.
Fuck.
And I was just like, that's it, I'm fucking done. I was like, no, because there's been things that had happened like that in the past where I've just let it go because I'm like, it's not worth it. But at that time I was like, actually, do you know what? No, I'm not dealing with this. So I kicked off a whole scene, wrote a press report about it and sent it to Tortoise Media. So that was quite funny. But yeah, that was when I first we've gone on a whole tangent there, sorry.
It's a great tangent.
Into the networking side and what my university experience was. But there was one thing I forgot to mention about my uni experience is that through that, what I just mentioned about doing a project instead of doing the written dissertation. So my degree was like what people prior to me starting would call like a fluff degree, let's call it that. But now it's like the most oversubscribed degree in the whole of Warwick University. And it's amazing. And people are like, oh, I want to get onto that course. How do you? And so doing my project, you could pretty much do it on anything to do with sustainability. And if you know anything about sustainability, everything is sustainability. Yeah. So there's not one thing that you couldn't relate back to, like creating a sustainable world. So I did my dissertation as a project on gender-based violence and how you can use art to basically get rid of the taboo in society about talking about gender-based violence. And I focused it in Leamington Spa, where I was living at the time at university, and I held an art exhibition instead of doing a written report on this. So I basically got loads of artists from all around the world who had been a survivor of domestic violence or gender-based violence to submit an art piece. Most of them were artists, but there were also some new people that had never contributed to an exhibition before. I had never hosted an exhibition before. I was just fascinated with art. I was really interested in bringing people together and curating stuff. And that was amazing because we basically held it in the middle of a shopping centre where you could not walk past it without looking.
Yes.
So it was so good because you got the people that would never even think about that as an aspect of their daily life. And we really got them talking about the issue at hand. So we held like a big event where we invited all the local charities that deal with domestic violence and gender-based violence, and really got the conversation flowing around like, why can't we talk about it? Like, why can't we invite it into a safe space so that if people are going through it at home and they don't know it's bad, they can understand that actually we don't need to be treated like this. So that's really what we tried to do, because I'd witnessed my mum growing up go through that. And it's like a whole full circle going back to like how your childhood impacts your later on in life. I'd always felt like I could never do anything about it because I was so like, I was basically voiceless like at that young age. And like seeing her go through it, sort of then I was like, I'd always wanted to do something and really show her that I had seen it, I had understood, I value her as a person. Like, she shouldn't have gone through what she had gone through, and I could only do that because she was safe when I did do it.
Yeah.
So I'd never felt like I could have that conversation with her until she met my stepdad, was in a very better position in her life, because then she was in that safe safe environment. Whereas if I'd brought it up sooner, it probably would have been too much to handle for her, because she probably not assumed that I had recognised it.
Yeah, devastating to know that your child has seen that and that it's impacted them. I mean, how could it not? It's that thing as well that you mentioned, you felt powerless. And of course, when you're a child, like, what on earth can you do? You're just an onlooker, a bystander, and watching the person that you love the most get hurt in more than one way. And what an incredible thing to do, like, your project on as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Like, she helped me curate some bits as well. She actually wrote a poem as well for the event, and that was just like the most amazing, like, full circle for us. And I think that's probably since then we have been like closer than we've ever been in our entire lives, because she's understood that I didn't understand what she went through, but I understand now the effect that it's had on her and the way she treated us because of it. Like, sometimes she was really strict on us, and I do understand now like why those things were.
Yeah, you do what you can, don't you, with what you've got. Yeah.
I had a guy stalk me, like really badly stalk me, and he was like my business mentor and was basically supposed to help my business grow, Scrubbee, my first business. And in our second meeting that we had, I wasn't wearing a low-cut top, but like I don't have any tits anyway, like what are you gonna look at? So I was wearing like something that was like on shoulder, and he said, "Oh, do you really think it's appropriate to wear that top to our meeting?" And I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "I can't stop looking down it." And I was like, wow, I think that's more of a you problem than it is a me problem. And then literally from that point onwards, he like stalked me obsessively on social media. He somehow got my phone number from like, I don't know what, maybe from like one of my business profiles. And then like continuously like text me, would send me photos of himself. Like, yeah. It was nasty.
That's gross, man. That's seriously gross.
You can see why I decided to jump out of the business scene a little bit.
I love the way that you handle these things, because a lot of the time, especially if it's one of the first times that happens to you, you're like, oh my God. And you know that feeling where like everything starts to go in slow motion and you feel like you're underwater, your adrenaline's going, you're like, what do I do? You know?
Yeah, but so many people don't speak up about it, and I understand why. Like, I genuinely do understand why people don't want to tell people about it. Yeah. But like people that have the confidence to, we have to, for those people that don't. And like my one of my best friends has been through something really recently at work where she had to speak up about it because she had heard from like 6 or 7 other women that didn't feel comfortable to say anything. And I was like, you have to be that person, like someone has to be, because it's going to continue happening if that person isn't taught that it's wrong and like punished for it. So yeah, it is really, and I think it happens more than we know, definitely, which is the sad thing, to be honest.
It's awful, isn't it? It's in everyday situations as well. It's like there's these wonderful things like Ask Angela at the bars, where, you know, if you don't feel confident enough, you need someone to help you get out of that situation safely. But like you say, I always think that's amazing that that's there, but I'm going to embarrass you now. Like if you've done something like that makes me uncomfortable or physically touched me or done anything that is inappropriate, you know, it might depend on the day, it might depend how I'm feeling, but a lot of the time I'll be like, explain to me why you did that, because it's not okay. And if I'm feeling within my power and safe to do so, like screw that behavior.
How do we, the issue is, isn't it? It's like, how do we teach that power? How do we like enable women to feel comfortable doing that? Because there is always going to be that power dynamic there. And like, if you're with somebody, like if you're in an instance where it's not a lot of people around, no matter if the public are going to do something or not, and I'm sure probably the majority won't. The other thing is like, if that person is physically bigger than you, like you don't want to put yourself in that position where you are going to be unsafe.
Yeah.
So I think there's so many things that come into it with things like that. And for me, it was always like, those had always been a power imbalance, because I'm a young female starting a business where I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm asking for help from someone that's done it before. And I think that, like, from that last instance I just mentioned, that was the last time I asked for help. And then after that point, I was like, I'm done with like having any like coaching or mentoring or whatever. Like, I'm good. I can do it myself. And I think and I understand, like, it again goes full back circle to my mum, like her being like, actually, do you know what? I'm just going to do it myself. I don't want to have to rely on a man to be the masculine figure in our relationship, provide for my family or do this or whatever, or make us feel safe. I'm going to do it myself. And it's like, no matter where it comes up in your life, it's always sort of going to be there. And yeah, it's really interesting how I now notice it, and I understand the way my mum's dealt with situations, because I would have done the same thing now from what I know.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's amazing as well, because like that was a specific example of a male mentor. Like I've sort of found a mentor recently, and she's female and she's amazing. And one of the things that I'm loving about the situation is that we're talking about not only business, navigating, you know, this, that, finding sponsors, finding funding, whatever. It's how to be a woman in business and how to be in a room where there are loads of alpha males shouting over one another, trying to vie for the attention in a very masculine way. How to be that presence without not being yourself. Because I don't want to be a leader in a masculine way. I want to be a leader in my way. I want to lead with intuition. I want to lead with, you know, emotions playing into it, because that's where we're strongest. There's some statistic that's just come out that female-led businesses do better in the long term than male ones. So we've got something, you know, we've got something.
We've got
in us.
so many things. I think it's such an interesting one, isn't it? Because like we've got onto this leadership side, and I think that's really where now I'm so passionate about, because I've seen the way that people lead. Like, I've worked in a variety of different businesses, whether it's been consultancy, associate roles or mentor roles, etc. And I've seen the way that different people lead. And like there is similarities between the way that women lead or more effeminate men lead. And I think there are so many things to like show about how amazing that we do things in that way. I think like with politics, if I can just give you that as an example, if you see recently, like we've had the New Zealand Prime Minister step down, we've had Nicola Sturgeon step down. Definitely part of their role of stepping down, of why they've chosen to do that, will be because they don't want to be in an environment that is so dominated with, again, shouting over one another, not leading with intuition and not having that humility. I think that's an empathy. Like, we do so well about having that more feminine side of us in leading in that way. And I think like they made both are absolutely amazing leaders. Like, you can have your opinions on some, but the way that they led and the way that they did things, like especially New Zealand's Prime Minister, like she was an absolute hero.
Right.
And I would just love to see, like, I wanted to get into politics. That's what I wanted to do before I was interested in sustainability. Like, I worked with my MP when I was younger, and then I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to get into politics. I was really passionate about the Green Party and Liberal Dems. And then I saw the way that politics happens on the ground, like when I was doing work with my MP and when I was working in like certain political bodies, I was like, oh my God, this is horrific.
Hell no.
Like the way that they talk to each other is disgusting. And like, I don't want to be part of that. Like, I don't want my love of politics to like go down because of the way that you have to be engaged. Like there's the most amazing MPs that we've got around the West Midlands that do it really, really well. Like these really strong women that push it forwards, but you can see the hate that they deal with online. And it's just like, I don't know if I want to deal with that. And I think that for me is like, I don't know if I'm ready for that right now. And I would love to go into politics one day, like maybe more of an advisory role rather than an MP, because it sounds like they have to deal with a hell of a lot. But it's still like, you just know that you're going to be faced with that sort of like old boys club side of things, because Parliament is so entrenched with that sort of thing. So yeah, it definitely stems out into more than just politics, but I think with the two that have just stepped down really recently, it's a really good example.
Oh God, absolutely. It's just those fundamental institutions, isn't it, that's, you know, if you have money, if you come from means, if you are upper class and you can afford to go there, it means that you have a shorthand in that environment, which is totally excluding of either people who aren't from that background, or of women, or of other marginalised genders, like, or even people of colour, for example.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's and that's leading from a point of view with no empathy, like, to speak on today's government, because there's
or self-awareness, to be honest. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I think women, like when we chatted about imposter syndrome, I think we have way more self-awareness because we've been brought up with that imposter syndrome. We've been taught that actually, oh, maybe we should rethink that, or maybe we should go down this route and do that job because we're not right for that job, or we're not right for that role, etc., or this place in society. And that has, no matter how bad it's been, has resulted in a huge array of self-awareness, because we know what we're good at, and we know maybe what we're maybe not good at, and where we need to bring other people in. And that can be on absolutely any level. Like, I feel like it's a lot easier, I don't know if this has just been my own personal experience, but it's a lot easier for me to be like, okay, this is what I'm really good at, this is what I know well at, these are things that I'm not so good at. So can we bring someone in that maybe represents this community? Can we bring someone in that maybe has had this personal experience? So I think that's probably what I see, like, in the majority of what I'm working with, because it's sort of more of a brash way of doing things if you're doing things from a more masculine side, because that's just, again, societal norms, etc. It goes back to your values, your upbringing, whatever it is that's entrenched of the way your personality is and the way you do things. And I think there's just a little bit less self-awareness in terms of the leadership side. I would say so, from what my experience.
Absolutely. So let's talk Scrubbee. So in your last year of uni, was it, you had an idea and started to create this company which was using waste products. So how did that come about, and what was your journey with Scrubbee? Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, final year of university, pretty much when lockdown was sort of about to start. So like February, March 2020. Really fun time for a student, definitely. I was basically like, at the time, so I was facing acne really, really bad. I think a lot of people did during lockdown, and I'm not sure why maybe that was. Maybe it's because we were starting to not look after ourselves so well, our diet, etc., not going out so much, not having like sun on our skin, etc.
Alcohol,
yeah. We can all be there. A load of different things. I think it was definitely, I mean, a whole goes back to like, your skin is like it's the way you treat your body. It comes out in your skin more than anything. But yeah, I was facing acne for the first time. I was studying my degree, which is in global sustainable development. So I was really looking to, like, lockdown gave me the time to really think about how can I make my entire lifestyle more sustainable. I've got more time now. Let's utilize it. Let's really think about how we can actually do that. And I've been thinking about Scrubbee for 6 months probably prior to lockdown actually starting. But then I was like, okay, now I've been given this time, I need to make use of it, because I'm never going to do it if I don't do it now. And then the third thing was that I was a student on a very low budget. So I was pretty much always that person that would be like looking in the sale items and looking what I could get, like in bulk, in cheap, etc., whatever it was that I could do to actually have the things I wanted, because I had sort of got myself to a position that I was not on the breadline like I was used to. So I was actually liking being able to afford things, but actually still being really scrupulous with my money. So yeah, sort of, I call that the bit pretty much like the triple dilemma. So facing acne, being a student on a low budget, and studying sustainability. And sort of how it started with Scrubbee is I was working in a coffee shop. and I was seeing how much coffee waste they were throwing away every single day. And I was like, surely this can be a better use. So this was when I was living in Australia in my second year of uni. And Australians are not so great at sustainability. I love everything else about their culture. The sustainability aspect, not great. So they waste a lot, and they're the same as in the UK, in the US, or a very highly consumative culture. And I was sort of like, this is a really valuable resource. Surely it can be used for something. And then I did some research, and I was like, what could I possibly use it for? And it came up online that it might be good for your skin because of the high caffeine, high antioxidant, high antimicrobial properties. So I was like, I'm going to give it a go, and we'll like see what happens. And so I held like this was still when I was in Australia, I held like a first make your own scrub day. So we brought in the coffee, we brought in some coconut oil and things like that, and we got people to come over and use the leftover coffee to make their own facial scrubs.
Cool.
And it was just like a really fun activity. Like it was just for a bit of a laugh, to meet new people, networking, etc. Worked really well. I tried it on my skin and I was like, wow, this is so good. and so I was just like, I need to give this a go. So then I had been using that for like ages. So like 6 months, 7 months. And then when lockdown happened, I was like, right, look, I've had this idea for ages. I feel like I could make a business out of this. Like I feel like more people could benefit from this. And then I would also be like helping the environment because I'd be stopping it from going to landfill, because coffee actually produces quite a lot of methane when it goes to landfill.
Okay.
So it would be taking that back out and bringing it back into the economy, which is what we call the circular economy. So pretty much that's where I focused on my entire time at university, around our consumption culture, our waste culture, how we can make every single product in our lifestyles more circular. So pretty much trying to live like a zero waste lifestyle. And then, so I had the idea with that, gave it a go. I went to my university and I was like, look, I've got this idea. I've got these products that I've trialed out. I was literally at the time making them like in my university accommodation. Like, God forbid, if I was to ever start selling them at that stage, I would have been sued so badly. Right. But yeah, so I basically just like trialed them on all my friends, like sent them to my university, and I was like, look, I've got this idea. Is there any support for students wanting to start a business? And they were amazing. The university were like, yeah, absolutely. We can give you funding. We can do this.
Great.
So they put me through like a whole program that I literally only just finished like a couple of months ago. So like since then, they've always supported me through.
That's incredible.
Which has been amazing. Yeah, I've had loads of students work for me. I've had like co-founders, etc. Which has just been so good. So that's sort of where it started. And then pretty much up to today.
Wow, my goodness. It's such a good idea though, using something that you have so much belief in and that's actually, clearing up your own skin. You're like, well, other people are going to benefit as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of
I mean, we started with coffee, and then I was like, okay, maybe we need to focus on the beverage industry as a whole, because we do as a society do a lot with food waste, like actual food waste that maybe is coming from supermarkets or our homes, etc. Whether it's composting, whether it's given away, we don't look at the beverage industry. And that was a huge area for me where I was like, there is a massive gap in the market here, because no one's really dealing with these waste products.
Right.
And I was really fascinated with like how much methane we could save, like how like we could bring it back into the economy, etc. So we started off with coffee, made 6 products, facial and body ones, and then we started to move towards wine-based products. So we worked with vineyards across the whole of the West Midlands, took their basically byproducts again, so what would go to landfill, which was made up of sort of what we call grape pomace. So it's like grape seeds, grape skins, vine leaves, vine stalks, etc. And it makes this sort of mulch. So we trialed out with that whether we could dry it and dry it and powder it to make a powder. Ooh. And then the second thing that we worked with is to make an oil. So we did a whole load of we worked with universities all across Birmingham to do this. We had loads of PhD students working on it and trying to find how we could do that, what benefit it would bring skin. And we found it was amazing for skin, really, really good for cellular turnover. So kind of anti-aging, you can call it in that perspective. And it was just a really, really good style. So we got to that, we kind of had all of the stuff together ready for that. And then, we just didn't quite get those products launched.
Okay, gosh. I've never heard of that. So you've literally found something new that you could have brought. Incredible. So whereabouts is Scrubbee now and into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a bit of a turning point for me. Started the business when I was very kind of youthful, naive. I was
Green.
like, I can save the beauty industry. I can make the whole world circular, and from my just one business. And we did like an amazing job. Like over the time, we saved like an insane amount from going to landfill. We did loads of research on like how much methane we've actually saved, and we never used plastic in our products. We really kind of focused on like as much holistic as possible to make it as holistic as possible. No chemicals, anything like that. It was fully vegan. The products were amazing. Like they're so good. Like the experience we had from our customers was so good. So we got to that point where we were sort of at a bit of a turning point. We were not making enough money to sustain ourselves long term. So we kind of had 2 points to whether we were going to go for a funding route, so whether we were going to go to like ask for funding and go to crowdfunder or go to like investors, etc. Or we were going to go down another route where we took on bigger contracts and just sort of like made it through until we got those big contracts. Those big contracts started to come through. And I was basically, so this was pretty much July last year, so July 2022. I was facing a bit of a moral dilemma because I'd started with the business with the intention of, I want to save like waste. I want to change our consumption in the beauty world. I want to educate people around what's actually in our beauty products, which we did a really good job of. But what we were really struggling to do was have that bigger impact. And don't know how much you know about the beauty industry, but it's pretty much governed by 5 companies. And if you're not one of those 5 companies, you're not really going to be able to grow very well. And even if you do grow, it's going to start to stagnate at some point because you're not on the same level. And they are pushing out an agenda in the beauty industry, whether that's through politics, whether that's through the way that we consume, whether that's through social media. It's very much its own world. Like once I got into it, I was like, wow, this is so much worse than I thought it was. And I think that was sort of like a really difficult situation for me because we were trying to make so much change, but on such a small scale compared to these massive companies that we weren't able to sort of get through to people as much as we wanted to. So we're at that dilemma point. We have to take a big contract with a big provider, or we need to go to investment. Investment was never really on the cards for me. I'd had some bad experiences with certain investors early on in the journey that just didn't understand what it was to run a beauty company. Like most of them were male, had never used beauty products in their life, didn't understand why it was worth funding them. And the whole other thing with investment is that they don't want to fund products. Like, I don't understand why, because they're the ones that actually you can see tangible money coming in, buy and sell. It's very simple. But they want to fund things like big like consultancies and things like that actually you've got nothing tangible that you can't see where your investment's going, which it just is an absolute mind thing for me. I can't deal with it. So I was like, I'm not going to go down that route because I can't find someone that actually understands what it is to run a beauty business. And it wasn't a beauty business, it was a sustainable business. That was our goal, and they just didn't get where that boundary was. So we were like, okay, let's give the contracts a go. Like, let's try and reach out to big companies, see if we can get some big contracts, move out. Like, we moved into a lab, we were all ready for it. Like, we were so ready for this bigger kind of step up. We took a bit of a risk. We were like, okay, we're gonna go with it because we knew some contracts were gonna come through. And then the contracts came through and I read through them, and they were with large organisations. I won't say the names to avoid any suing, but large organisations that would have really pretty much within a week doubled the size of our business. So an amazing opportunity. And I was like, yes, this is so good. We're ready. We can employ more people. We can get going. Like, I'm really going to make a change now. And those contracts come through, and I read in small fine print at the bottom that our packaging needs to be changed. And there are 6 packaging options that we can use. Each of those are fully plastic.
Right.
And we not only need that, but we also need an outer box packaging, which is made from cardboard, great, but is in a plastic film. And it needs to be coated, needs to be printed on, which makes it wholly less recyclable. Like, people don't quite understand that.
Yeah.
The best recyclable is that's literally just a cardboard box. Doesn't need anything on it. And I was like, oh God, no, we're literally a plastic-free company. The second thing was that they needed, it was just so unreasonable. They needed like 3,000 units and they weren't going to pay for the first 3,000. And if those sold well, after that point, they would start stocking our products and paying us for it.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so do you want me to literally not eat for the next year?
So you take all the risk and we'll take all the reward.
Exactly.
Thanks. Yeah.
And that so we said no to that contract.
Yeah.
That was actually a company that I really wanted to work with as well. And they were what you would take credit as in society for those that was probably pretty sustainable.
Really? Oh.
And then the second contract comes through and it's 10 times worse.
Oh.
And I am just like, oh God, I don't know if I can deal with this. And then, so these are two companies that I really wanted to work with as well, that I was really disappointed in. And I tried to kind of go back to them and say, look, like we're at this stage, like we know that we can grow pretty quickly because the feedback we've had from our limited amount of customers has been great. Like we're doing really well. But we obviously need some support here. We can't fork out £10,000 to put our products on your shelf. Like that's so unreasonable, and it's products that we'll have to build ourselves, like create ourselves. We're making everything from scratch.
Yeah.
And then we basically got to points. We said no to two contracts that we really wanted. The third one that came in was from a fast fashion brand. And they were really wanting to get on board with us. They were like, look, we're really trying to become more sustainable as a business, So I sat down in a meeting with them and I was like, okay, look, obviously your outward facing profile to me as someone who knows a lot about sustainability and has worked in it, like has been fascinated with it since I was 16 years old, is not sustainable. So what do you mean when you say we are transitioning to become a sustainable business? And it literally came on like deaf ears. They were like, look, we just thought we want to stock you. We want to get better products on our shop. And I was like, okay, does that mean that you're going to stop stocking those that aren't so sustainable? And that I was like, I want to see like more to do with your supply chain, And they wanted to bring all of our manufacturing that we were doing from scratch. So we knew our suppliers by name. We knew every single product that was going in, the background of it, who was like making it pretty much. They wanted to take every single thing of that and manufacture in their facilities, which for me, I know that's going to be offshored. So I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry. If you really are believing in wanting to become a more sustainable business, I need to see the transparency in your supply chain. And they were like, they kind of got to a point where like, you're kind of not worth it then, are you?
Right.
So, because I think that they then realised that I was serious about sustainability.
You only wanted to greenwash a little bit. Why are you questioning?
Exactly. Like, we're just trying to use you to help us look better. So I was sort of like, that all happened within the space of like 3 or 4 months. And I was like, I don't know what to do because I am at a moral like dilemma here. I can't say yes to these contracts that will mean our business is going to grow. And this was like, I was hearing the same stories from loads of different people that have like indie or sustainability brands in the beauty and cosmetic side, that they were facing the same thing. They were like, we just can't get over this initial like, we're doing well, we're still in the sort of indie small business startup stage. We just can't get to that next level because there's no one funding us, or if we're trying to self-fund and trying to grow ourselves, the opportunities that we've got are absolutely rubbish.
Right.
So it was just sort of like, I sat down with my team and I was like, look, this is what is happening right now. Like, what do we do? And I said, look, let's just try, like, maybe the options are that we bring in someone else and to run it and we keep the business going. But after like really thinking that through, I was like, knowing how much of an attention, pragmatist or whatever I am, I would probably hate that, and I don't think I could let someone do things to the business that I maybe didn't agree with. And it always came back to that moral dilemma. And I think like I was like, maybe I just have too strong a morals to be in the business world. Like maybe I just care too much. Like everybody else is running their businesses fine, of not worrying about working with this company and that company and working with like a really dodgy factory in China. And maybe I should just be like them, because then I can be big, I can grow, I can be a successful entrepreneur, etc. And like I'm watching like other beauty companies like blow up overnight that like started like similar like times as me, etc. that are using like suppliers that I just know they don't know what's happening behind the scene, and like that is fine, like amazing. I'm so I'm so great because most of those are amazing female entrepreneurs. Like it's amazing that they can do that and they've made the business grow, but I just couldn't do that. I just couldn't like work with suppliers and do certain things that like I didn't personally agree with. So yeah, long story short, we got to a point where I was like, okay, I don't think that this is worth it anymore. We are throwing money down the drain for something that I don't think is actually making as much of an impact that I initially thought I was creating. So when I first started the business, as I mentioned, like it was all about like changing consumer base, like making people educated of what's actually going in our beauty products, what we're putting on our skin, because whatever you put on your skin goes into your bloodstream. Like it's exactly the same of what you would eat. And if you're putting stuff on your skin, like it's different if you're facing like kind of proper hormonal acne, etc. But if you're sort of kind of got a more generic type skin, you don't need to be using all of these sort of harsh chemicals that not only affect your bloodstream and your hormonal balance as well as a woman, it affects the way that when we wash it down the drain, what the impact of that is. Like there's so many different knock-on impacts of this. And I think like I was hugely into beauty and cosmetics. Like I had probably every cosmetic on the like high street in my bathroom. And I just got to a point where I was like, what's the point of this? Like I just don't get it. Like we're being fed that we need to use like 15 million things in our skincare routine, and I was like, this is not for me anymore. And
you need to look like a glazed donut, they say these days.
Literally, yeah. And like I love that look. Like I'll do everything I can, but like it can be done by like looking after yourself as well as other things. So yeah, I pretty much got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm at a turning point here. I'm either gonna have to change my morals pretty much to make the business profitable, because yes, we talk a lot about sustainability, like it's like people and profit and like environmental focus as well. But if you're gonna run a for-profit business, which is a limited business, that's what we were set up as, you need to be able to sustain yourself, because you can't pay your staff, you can't pay yourself, etc. And there were points where I was literally like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to actually like pay people. And then the other aspect for me was like, shall I change it into a CIC, so a community interest company? So I like ummed and ahed about this for a long time. I was like, okay, we can become like basically a charity, and actually let's not focus on profit. Let's just make let's just make enough so that we can pay people, we can make this, whatever, we can be a certain size, and then the rest of it we can fund projects. Like we can fund like anti-plastic campaigns, we can do this, we can work with like certain charities, work with Greenpeace throughout the whole time, like they were amazing. But I was sort of like, again, I'm producing a product that is adding to this consumption society, because having like beauty products are not essential. Like no one can agree that we need them to survive. Like societally, yes, but actually like physically, we don't need them to survive. So that's like for me the difference between like a consumable and an essential thing that we need in life. And we were producing something that was a consumable, which is adding to this consumption society that we live in, this throwaway waste society. And so I was sort of like, yes, we are impacting so much in the waste side of things, we're impacting people in education side of things, but bottom line, we are still selling a product that is a consumable. So that for me was pretty much like when I came to realize that more and more in the industry that we were in, and how much it's very focused on like convince people they have a problem, sell them a solution. And we felt we were becoming more like that because we were having to make ends meet. And for me, I was like, I don't want this to be the rest of my life. Like, I don't want to be known as a business that has got rid of its morals, because you see that so often in society. You see companies, you see CEOs give up pretty much, because it is hard. It's so hard to be a sustainable business. But at the end of the day, like, it really needs to come back to like, why did you start it? And that's for me, like when I like sat down like with my mum, with my friend, and I was like, look, I'm dealing with this right now. I don't know what to do. And they were like, is it worth it? Like, is it actually worth it? And I was like, I just don't think it is. And that for me, I was just like, okay, now I'm gonna start to like stop this now. So we stopped before Christmas. We didn't sell at all. We basically sold up to a point where we'd got rid of most of our stock, so that we didn't have to deal with like waste, etc. And now we have like some like inventory left, etc. But we're pretty much there. And we're working out what's next. We're sort of at that stage now. We've got a couple of options. It's never going to completely go as a business. It very much has a really strong backing. And the customers we did have were very passionate about sustainability, which is amazing. And I'm so glad that for them and for their passion for sustainability that I didn't change the way that I did things, because no matter what the money was going to be at the end of the day, it's so not worth it. Like, I don't want to be known as that person that just gave in to the small capitalist culture, pretty much.
Right.
And so, so we're sort of working out at the moment whether we can bring it back in a certain form underneath another company, which will basically just manage the products. So Scrubbee as a sort of company itself will go, but the products may remain.
Right.
The other option is to work directly with other companies and basically use us as a sort of a trailblazer to show like ways in which you can do things in the beauty industry to change things. So my sort of role in the beauty industry right now is more of an advisory role. So I'm working with a manufacturer and I'm really helping them ensure that they've got all the processes in place. And I'm also working with an e-commerce site, which is pretty much to help them assist all the brands that they've got on there to ensure that they are, because they brand themselves as sustainable e-commerce and beauty e-commerce. I'm making sure that they've got the right brands on there that are actually talking the talk, walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yes.
So that's sort of where we've come full circle from me, sort of like having the idea, starting it as a student, being very optimistic and very naive, to kind of really realizing what's actually happening and now trying to change that as a more of an advisor rather than someone who's got their own business doing it on the ground. Because when you have your own business, you're working in the business more than you're working on the business. And that's there was the issue for me. I was like, my headspace is all the time like it's fighting fires. Like I'm like, okay, by next week I need to have this order ready, or I need to do this, I need to go here, etc. And I was never really pushing out what I went in to do, because once we had the products and we had the messaging, we were then focused on the selling. We weren't focused on the educating or the advisory side, which was for me the most important side, because you need to change the system before you start to use the system.
Right.
So that's pretty much what I came to learn, and that's where I am now.
Oh, damn.
A long story.
Going in with good intentions, on one level, it shouldn't mean that you're naive or green. It means that you are a decent person with intelligence and that goes with a vision. This is how things should be, and it really is how things should be. And the fact that you're met with barriers and, let's face it, corruption and greed and things that mean that you cannot push past that ceiling unless you branch out, unless you're incredibly creative and think of something that perhaps hasn't even been done before. Like, it's gate kept as an industry. I mean, and part of me just hates the fact that it's just like, oh, you know, oh, just grow up, you know, live in the real world. Well, that should be the real world, and it's crushing, really.
Exactly. And I mean, it goes back to like how we do business. Like the way that all of our systems are built on right now isn't for the greater goods, really.
No.
And I think that's like, I came into it with the intention of like, if we can prove to people how good these products are, we can change their mind. We can get them to move towards sustainable, like more sustainable products, etc. But really, it's not the case. You need way more than that to get through. Like, we tried with advertising, marketing, all of that side, and it's sort of like the only ones that get through are the bad stories, like are the things like if you're facing acne and you're struggling with your mental health because of your acne, this product can save you. And it's just sort of like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to convince people they've got problems.
Right.
And then say, oh, look how amazing. Like, we can show you a before and after of people using our products, which we did because our products did actually affect people and help them.
That's truthful.
But having to push that out to get people to buy just really, I'd really struggled with that.
It's almost as though you'd be becoming what you hate, in that, you know, you convince, especially women, that you have this problem. Your nose is wrong, your lips are wrong, your hair is wrong, and then you spend loads of money trying to correct something that isn't actually wrong in the first place. It's beautiful in its own way, but because you aren't fitting in this particular standard, or, you know, that you're having some kind of health problem either with your skin or whatever it's manifesting, is like, oh, you know, is this you? Spend your money. It's like, I mean, I'd rather give my money to you, but I know where you're coming from with your intention, kind of thing.
Yep, exactly.
It's like there's no winning.
No, it felt like that. And I think that's the hardest thing, because I had worked so hard on that business. Like, I had given sweat and tears for that business. And we had many successes. But just like coming to the end of it, I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, I was like 23. I was like, I don't need to be busting my ass for something that I'm literally getting nothing back from.
Yeah.
Like, yes, maybe I'm affecting a couple of hundred people, and like businesses would ask me to come and do like talks about the business, etc. And I'm like,
nice.
That's great, but like, where's the money at? Because we can't keep going.
Yeah. If
you're going to continuously give me support programs of mentoring and coaching because you believe the business is going to do well.
Yeah.
But how are we going to get over that next stage if there's no one supporting us financially? Because when you're focused on providing more than just the bottom line, you need more money to get it going. And that's the reality of the situation. So it's sort of, it's literally a catch-22 situation.
How do you feel in the future, in an ideal world, if you had the stage and there were all these business people who ran all of these awful corporations? Just hear me out. It never happened, but
we're having a field day.
Putting the world to rights. What would you say? What do you feel like the solution might be to take step 1, step 2, and start the way so that sustainability can manifest, and smaller businesses with better intentions, let's face it, can start to have even a small part of that marketplace?
Yeah, gosh, it's so difficult. I mean, like, this may be getting really deep, and someone might be called a socialist activist, but here we go.
All good.
But yeah, I think like it goes back to like the way that we run things in society. Like, I don't know if you saw on my TED talk, I spoke a lot about GDP.
Yeah.
So like how we run our society is not going to change unless we change the things that govern us. So the things that govern us, like GDP, the way we, like, etc., we measure our economic activity, which is pretty much the biggest thing that's measured globally, because we focus on monetary as the biggest outcome of success. And that's the way it is right now. Whether that's right or wrong, for instance. But what I find really interesting is that GDP doesn't include things like household, like work, for instance. Like, it doesn't include childcare, and it doesn't include. It does include like an over expenditure of money to fix problems. Like, if you look at like my best example is always like Deepwater Horizon, like the big oil spill that happened like years and years ago. That literally increased GDP. So that was seen in the financial side of things, the monetary side of things, as a success, because more money was spent clearing up that spill. More money was spent because they had to do a big payout to certain individuals who were affected. So it's just sort of like, how can that be a way we see success? I think it always goes back to like how we're governed, like, and how that works and how that trickles down into society, because our focus as a world on GDP affects our focus in politics and the focus on money and economic expenditure and how well we're doing and that side of things. It then affects our business world. It affects, we always focus on, the biggest question that I always got asked was like, what's your turnover? How much did you make last year? Or like, how much are you going to go for in an investment round? And then it affects the effect on us as individuals as well. It's always that trickle down effect. Like we are always striving to be earning more, to having more, to having the best of things. Like the amount that we turn over stuff right now is just ridiculous. And like I'm susceptible to that as well. Like living in a high income country, you become part of the problem. Yeah. And like even though you try not to, it happens. It does happen. Yeah. Like for like with anything, it can be from the car you drive, the phone you have, etc. Because you can have it, you do have it. And I think that's always what stems back to that. And that's really where I sort of was like, I am adding to this issue in running a beauty business, because the beauty industry is not ready yet for sustainability. So, yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, with inflation, what it is, it's difficult not to spend the absolute earth on the essentials these days as well. And I mean, you talked about it on your TED Talk as well. Climate change obviously doesn't affect us as much as other underprivileged communities. And we have the luxury of not having to experience devastating effects of climate change right now, whereas other people, other side of the world, especially women, have to experience that effect. And I think if we even lived one day of perhaps their worst day, if we lived their worst day, or even their medium day, for God's sake, like I think things would change mindset wise. But because we are allowed to turn a blind eye, we're allowed to shop at all of these fast fashion places, and you know, we want the best stuff.
It's ease. It's ease, yeah.
And everyone
it's convenience.
Does it.
Yeah. It is such a thing, and I think it's not. I also think right now it's like in society, it's not seen as a bad thing to do. No. Like if we go down to the high street and we buy whatever, we fill up our bag and then we decide that actually we don't want half of it. Right. It's not a bad thing. That's what we're taught in society. Like if you have the financial capital to do it, go off and do it. It's your money. You choose what to do with it. And I do agree with that to a certain extent, but it's when we don't see like our effect as individuals of what we have on society, and like the whole kind of carbon footprint stuff. I don't even get me started on it. Started by a oil conglomerate, so thank you. But I do think it is really important that we have that individual understanding and education as well as that collective understanding. So really from that, going back to your point about if I was in a boardroom with all those people, really I would just want them to think about what is it that we actually want to prioritize. Like the biggest thing that I always say in like quite a lot of my public like speaking events, especially with like climate activists, is what will it take? Like what will it take for you, if I can imagine you right here, the head of BP or an oil company, God forbid, like what will it take for you to change your mind? Right. Like will it take your children getting ill from microplastic ingestion? Will it take air pollution, like reducing your life expectancy by 15 years? Will it take like having to deal with floods and droughts and a whole array of like natural disasters every single year, it becoming the norm? So it's just sort of like how long will it take these people to realize? And I think like I probably sound like the film, what's it, like Don't Look Up right now. I'm like, yes. But I think it's like that I mean, that sort of leadership is very important in society, because like we see big change when activism really happens. And something I read really recently that I just found like so interesting is that yes, right now, maybe as a society, maybe as the UK, Europe, whatever we're looking at, we're not quite moving towards like more sustainable practices that we should be. But what we actually need is about 25% of the population to create a tipping point. So like when we're talking about like behavior change in sustainability, which is the biggest thing that we talk about right now, it's like, how do we get people to come to our side? Like, how do we get them to understand what's important, really get them to actually change the way they do things, whether that's their personal life, their business life, their politic life, etc. And it is getting 25% of the population, because if you get 25% that believe we need change, are really active about it in their personal lives, in their business lives, whatever it is, as much as possible, you need that 25% to create that tipping point, because then the rest of society will say, oh, there's a change coming actually. Right. We should get on board with this because we know it's happening. Whereas right now, we've sort of, I would say we've got about 10% of the UK population really pushing towards this. Yeah. Maybe even less, definitely in the business world, a lot less. if we can, and right now people see actually they're a minority, but if we can get them to become noisier and more active and actually making more impact, that's where we can see that tipping point happen. And that's when it will start to flood across society to say, I'm going to get on board with this because otherwise I'm going to be left behind. So that's really like, that's the biggest area that I'm working on at the moment, trying to get that sort of understanding, education of what's actually happening, what you can do about it, because that like eco-anxiety is huge. Like all the time I'm talking to people that are like, I know it's happening, but what do I do about it? And that's really where I'm dealing with right now. So with that education side and understanding from a very basic level what you can do about it, how it's going to impact you, and where the sort of trajectory is happening and what's changing in society.
Yeah, if people have practical steps that they also know other people are doing it, okay, cool, well maybe there's a bit of a revolution coming, let's go.
Yeah, I mean it's autonomy as well. Like if they feel like they have the ability to deal with it, then they will. It's right now, it just seems like something that's so far ahead, like setting these net zero 2050 goals, like half the population like won't even be working during that time that are alive right now, and the ones that are setting these policies probably won't be either. Maybe some of them won't even be here.
Let them deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just sort of like, if we keep pushing it back, we're already seeing like so much impact in society across the world. Like we're working with like groups, like because I work with Greenpeace, working with groups all across the world that are facing right here, right now. Every single day is impacted by that. And like in the UK, like some things that we don't see related to our like our greenhouse gas emissions, for instance, is air pollution. Like that is really badly affecting cities in the UK, but we don't notice it because it's something that it will affect you as an individual, but it won't affect you for 10 to 15 years. So it's always that like, we have a very sort of like blinkers on approach to the things that we do in society because we're always short-termism. And that's like, okay, what am I doing next week? What am I doing next year? Like what job am I going to do, etc. It's we never think about that whole generational aspect. And that's where I think like we'll come into in a minute, I'm sure, is like the difference there between the way that women see climate change and its effect, because we maybe have more of an in touch with that intergenerational, because we know that if we do choose to, we are the child bearers. So we are responsible for making ourselves healthy, but also our children healthy. And it's also like, I'm not even sure if I want to have children, but I still feel that because I have a huge amount of empathy towards like generations that I see growing up now. And whether that is because we are women, whether that's because it's been ingrained in society for us to be more empathetic, be more caregiving, or whether it's a biological thing, I'm not sure. But I do see, like, when I asked that question that I said to you, like, what will it take? The one that always gets through to women is when I say about the children one, like, your child will become ill from things like this and this and this. Whereas for men, it's much more of a trickier, trying to understand what it is that their ticking point is and where I can get them to change their opinion, really.
Wow. It's incredible how differently people work in that way, and you
Absolutely.
have to, it's almost become psychological, and you think, what will it take?
Yeah.
What is going to make you change your mind in such a way that you actually go home, think about it, sleep on it, get up, think, I have to do something. Like,
yeah, I feel like I'm literally like,
people.
when we went back to like, what's your title? I feel like I could be like, and now I'm like, I try and read brains. Like I try and work out who the person is and how to talk to them about climate. I feel like that's always the biggest thing, because I've always got like different hats on. I've got my activist hat on with my work with Greenpeace, or I've got my business sustainability hat on, where I'm talking to board members, directors, like CEOs, etc., staff, and I'm always thinking about how do they want to hear it, because if you can talk to someone in a way that they resonate with, that's when you can get the most change. So that's really where I'm trying to work on at the moment with that education piece.
Oh, that's so interesting. So moving on to now and in the future, so you're currently working on an incredible project which is called the Chicopreneurs, which, do you want to explain the word and sort of where you're moving with it?
So people use the term ecopreneurs quite a lot in the business world, the entrepreneur space. It basically translates to like people working on sustainable businesses or running sustainable businesses. But I sort of was like, okay, this is great. Like, loads of people doing this. Loads of people using this term now, which is awesome. But I don't see, there's not much similarity between those people who you would brand as an ecopreneur, which is always an issue with a title. Because if you're giving someone a sort of very broad umbrella term, but they aren't very similar at all to other people working in the field, which is how I basically felt. So I branded myself as an ecopreneur. I was like, yes, I've got a business, but I'm not just focused on profit. I'm focused on a whole lot else. For me, I was working with other ecopreneurs that I wouldn't say were doing the same thing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to work out what it is of the certain people that I meet that I really feel I resonate with them. And shock horror, they were all women. So pretty much I had met over my time in the sustainability field, maybe 200 to 300 women working in the sustainability field. I'd had like the pleasure of working abroad, working in the UK, all over the UK, etc., and working with a whole different variety of people. But what really stuck out to me is that all of those that ran sustainable businesses or organizations, charities, whatever they were, that had this really core message of like, we're not only working for profit, we're also looking at the social and the environmental. Right. So really those kind of three pillars of sustainability. And I started chatting with them. I was like, why did you get into this? Like, why are you passionate? Like, how do you sort of bring this forward, etc.? And I just found so many more similarities with women in the space than I did with men. And I'm not sure why. I'm still investigating why that is. And it's not to say that they're any less valuable businesses. No. It's just to say that actually the way that we did things as women running sustainable businesses was very different. Right. So pretty much what I came to I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to stop using this term. Like, let's come up with a new term. And I was like, okay, chicopreneurs actually works really well. Yeah. So it's like a woman or an individual identifying as woman or femme, using their innate power as a caregiver and an empath to run a sustainable business. Or sustainable organization. So pretty much what that looks like in reality is I work with a framework right now that I've created, which is focused around like the Chico skills. So with the first 5 letters of Chicopreneur. So the first one is self-awareness, which we've chatted a little bit about. So what you do know and what you don't know and who you need to bring in. So maybe you actually do need to bring a man in for certain instances, or maybe you need to bring in someone that's of a particular geographic or particular race or particular gender, etc. The second one is humility. So really kind of stepping on from that self-awareness side. So not only bringing people in, but understanding and becoming aware of other people's issues and how to use your power as someone that's running that business and that leader to actually bring other people's opinions in as well and save space for that. The third one is empathy, which again, we've chatted a little bit about. So really kind of stepping into maybe what we have been taught and those values and the upbringing into us, but actually not seeing it as something that is powerless, seeing it as something that is so powerful, because with that empathy, you can do XXX and you can lead in a particular way. And then the third one, the fourth one, C, is around community. So community over competition always. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen come out from every woman that I've worked with in the sustainability fields, because we went back to you saying at the start about me is that I'm so willing to give people my time. Yeah. This is such a similarity between so many women in the side, because we've gone through and we've had to fight certain things to get that. Yeah. So now we're going to help you. And like the saddest thing that I see sometimes in the business world is women that are trying to pull other women down because they want to get up to a certain point. And I've seen this really recently with one of my best friends in her job role. And it's so sad, but I understand it, and I don't resent these women for it, because I understand that they've had to fight to become the first woman to do this or the first woman to do that, so that they don't want that limelight taken away from them, because that's what keeps them and gives them respect in this society and in this job or whatever it is, their company that are in. So they don't want another woman doing it, because then it's just part of the norm. So I understand it, But it is really sad because we can achieve so much more by putting that ladder down back after us and bringing people up. So that's the one that I see. And it's not only just that, it's also between businesses. So if we've got sustainable businesses, why are we not working together? And that can be down to the most simplistic things of like products that we're not using in our company, whether it can be like one man's waste is another man's treasure.
Sure.
Let's change that to one woman's waste. But it's pretty much like thinking about like how can we collectively work together, because at the end of the day, we've got a finite planet with finite resources. If we're all fighting over the same thing, no one is going to prosper. And then the final one is around organisation. So it's pretty much like the activist side. So really, what can you do now to bring forth things that you've learned into the public space? So whether that's education, whether that's lobbying, whether that's politically, whether that's using social media to really sort of like pull now forwards all of this stuff that you've learned and you're working towards into the public eye so that we can change opinion, really. And again, goes back to that 25% of people. Let's get 25% of people believing in what we do, create an organisation, bring it forwards, and get opinion changed.
Absolutely. I love that as well, because you've got all of those aspects, and it does feel quite familiar as to the way that, you know, women and, you know, people who identify as such think. It's all about their empathy, and we are now packaging it as it isn't a weakness. It was never a weakness, let's be honest. It was just a stupid toxic masculinity culture saying, oh, that's weak, when it's not. It's using something which isn't perhaps the loudest in the room, but it's incredibly intuitive, and it leads you in the right direction, and it allows you to, I think if there's going to be one group of people that, you know, can save this, you know, planet, it's going to be women, because women are doing the things and possess the qualities which are needed naturally. Not to say that some men don't, of course, but if you were going to make grand generalizations, there's a reason that shecopreneurs are with each other, and that you don't quite identify with the way that male entrepreneurs who are in the sustainable sector do stuff.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's funny that you used to say about like there are definitely men in the space doing things, because the person that first got me involved in sustainability was my stepdad. But he is probably the most in touch with his like emotion, in touch with his mental health, in touch with everything around him. Like male I've ever met in my entire life.
Wow.
And I think that's what really kind of hit me, because he will sit with me, like he's come to so many events with me that are like all female panels talking about female issues, because he finds that fascinating, and he's like, wow, okay, now I'm going to go back into my workplace. And like in his team, it's a small team, there's 3 in the core, in his core business, so 2 men and 1 woman, and he was like, actually I need to talk to this woman who works with him about her role in the company, because she's been working with me a hell of a long longer than I've given other people raises and other people opportunities, etc. And he actually made her director after that. And it's just like so interesting when like you need that sort of malleable brain that actually can listen to someone and say, wow, yes, and now I'm going to take that. And that is that humility and that self-awareness. So it's stemming back to it, and those maybe why I've sort of seen it as a more of the kind of Sheco skills, is because we have learnt that more, because that's the way that we've been, like our values and our upbringing have been, whereas men in society, which is really, really sad, have been pushed down and more, you have to be this certain way, you have to be masculine, you have to be this, etc., and don't see these as skills that they need to work on. And that's really what I want to create from it. So originally with Shecopreneurs, we want it to be a community of women, but with that last side, that organisation side, what we want to do is create something where we can go and say to men and say, look, this is really important. Like these skills, you don't like, if you're creating a business, like the first thing that they teach you in business school is like a business plan and a financial trajectory or whatever it
elevator pitch, like
exactly how to pitch. Oh god, yeah, like how to present yourself in a certain way. And it's like, actually, shall we teach these skills in this world as well as teaching that? Because they're not innate to everybody.
No.
So and like the business skills out there, no matter what they are, they're not going to be innate, but some people will be better than others at them.
Sure.
So to have to educate some people on it isn't a bad thing at all. It's really just like, okay, this group of people have got more experience because they've had personal experience.
Yeah.
And now let's use their personal and professional experience as the Chicopreneur Network in educating people of how to value these skills in business. And really the whole goal of creating this Chicopreneur community is changing the way we do business, because it goes back to the whole reason why I've chosen to stop my work in Scrubbee, because you need to change the system before you join the system.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much that kind of whole root circle. And what we're trying to do with it is, first of all, we've created that framework, create the community, and then from that point, we want to write a book, and we want to enable young women, like myself at the time when I first started my business, to have blueprints of how business can be done differently. So to show those case studies, to hear those stories about how women have done the most incredible things, run the most incredible businesses, had businesses that have been sustainable, not only economically, but socially and environmentally.
Right.
And show them how they did it, what they did wrong, maybe what they wouldn't do again, provide that blueprint so that maybe they don't have to feel like they're at a loose end like I did, felt like I have to let this go because I'm so my moral compass is all over the place right now that I need to take a step back. And maybe if I had this blueprint book, I maybe would have been able to keep going.
Right.
So it's really about sort of showing that actually we can do things differently, and here is the community that will be able to support you in doing so.
Right.
So by having with the book, what we want to do is have all of these women create their own stories within it. So it would be a sort of co-curated book, providing that framework at the start. And we're going to be working with climate activists as well, not just sort of like your typical entrepreneur. We're going to rebrand what it means to be an entrepreneur too. So have artists, have poets, have activists, have people that are running kind of charities and businesses, etc., and really bring them together and be like, look, you don't have to do things the way that the business books tell you to do things.
Right.
There are so many other opportunities for you, and really just show that it can be done differently.
Like you say, we're valuing things other than GDP.
Absolutely.
We're valuing social change and on all of those levels that affect us in our everyday lives now, so we're not going to be breathing in polluted air forever. We're not going to be working towards, the bottom line all the time. We can actually afford to create these incredible companies that support local communities, that grow in a way and can grow, have the opportunity to flip and grow in the world in a way that, they're not just stomped out by the big boys, essentially.
Absolutely.
It sounds like an incredible project. I love it. I think that we're being flagged. That might be all the time we have. But thank you so much for joining me, Maddie. This has been incredible. I've loved this conversation.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. And we'll be obviously following everything you do. And best of luck with everything in the future.
Thank you.